closer, breathe in the light, morning hum in the garden high. Every wing has a story to tell, every root knows how to heal. We listen, we learn, we gather and grow, where the bees and the wild things know.
Hello, bee enthusiasts. Welcome to the Attic Bee Podcast. I'm your host, Jody Schramm. Now that we are finally getting some much-needed spring rain, I thought it would be worthwhile just talking about our relationship with water. This is also on the heels of having visited my son in Florida and feeling so refreshed by the little hotel pool that I could get into in those hot Floridian temperatures. It just felt so good. And I'm a bit of a water bug anyway. So for me, summertime really involves a lot of swimming in the ocean and swimming in other people's swimming pools because I don't have my own. But that sense of immersion, that sense of floating, that sense of weightlessness, and then also moving our bodies through the water, that just feels like the best form of exercise ever. Kind of brings it all into focus for me while we're getting these really lovely rains this weekend. There's something, I think, universal about the way humans respond to water. Most of us know the feeling instinctively, the exhale that comes when we step into a warm bath after a difficult day, or the quiet shift that happens when we sit beside a river long enough to stop thinking in sentences. The way our shoulders lower at the sight of the ocean. The way children move toward puddles without even being taught how to do so. Water calls to us. And when you spend enough time around honeybees, you begin to realize something else. It calls to them too. When most people think about bees, they think about flowers. Nectar, pollen, honey. Maybe they picture a field of wildflowers humming in the heat of summer. But water is just as essential to a honeybee colony as blossoms are. Without water, a hive can't survive. And the more I've observed bees over the years, the more I've come to believe that our relationship with water isn't all that different from theirs. We often think of water as a utility, something functional, something to drink, something that comes from a faucet or fills a bottle. But water is more than just a resource. It's a regulator, a messenger, a healer. It's a living partner in the health of both ecosystems and nervous systems. So I want to talk about the importance of water for honeybees and for us, not just biologically, but emotionally, mentally, and maybe even spiritually. Because the same substance that cools a beehive in July is also capable of calming an overwhelmed human nervous system. And there's something we're meant to learn from that. Honeybees collect water with remarkable intention. On hot days, you'll often see worker bees gathered around shallow puddles or bird baths, even muddy edges of ponds or dripping faucets, sometimes just wet stones. A lot of times people panic when they see bees swarming around a swimming pool or hovering near their pet water bowls, but the bees aren't there to sting anyone, they're just thirsty. Or more accurately, the colony is thirsty. A honeybee colony uses water for several reasons. The bees dilute stored honey with water to make food digestible for larvae and other adult bees. Nurse bees use water while producing brood food for developing young. And one of the most fascinating uses of water in the hive is for climate control. Honeybee colonies maintain the brood nest, which is where the baby bees develop, at about 93 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And that temperature range is really important. If it's too cold, the developing bees will struggle. If it's too hot, the brood health is compromised. So, during intense summer heat, worker bees become air conditioning specialists. Some bees collect water while others fan their wings inside the hive. And that fanning helps water evaporate, which cools the colony, kind of like perspiring cools the human body. An entire community is working cooperatively to regulate stress and maintain conditions necessary for life. I think there's something profoundly beautiful in that image. And honestly, it's deeply familiar too, because humans are constantly trying to regulate internal conditions as well. Our nervous systems are always responding to our environments, to stress, conflict, overstimulation, fear, uncertainty. We are biological beings, just like bees are, and our bodies are always attempting to maintain balance. When we become overheated emotionally, whether that's anxiousness, feeling burnt out, or overwhelmed, our nervous systems search for regulation the same way bees search for water. Sometimes we seek silence, sometimes we need movement, and sometimes we just need the comfort from another person. Often, whether consciously or unconsciously, we seek water. There's a reason people say they need the ocean. I'm one of them. There's a reason people sit beside lakes when they're grieving. There's a reason warm baths have existed as healing rituals in cultures around the world for thousands of years, if not longer. Water changes us physiologically. Studies have shown that immersion in water can lower cortisol levels, reduce heart rate, and activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the part of the nervous system associated with rest, recovery, and safety. Even listening to water can alter brain activity and reduce stress responses. We know this intuitively, even before I think science confirmed it. Have you ever noticed how difficult it is to remain mentally frantic while floating in water? Not impossible, of course. Some people have a fear of water. But for anybody who's normally comfortable in water, it's pretty difficult to be frantic when you're floating. Water slows us down. It changes sensory input. It softens sound, it changes gravity, it interrupts mental momentum. When we soak in water, whether it's swimming or even just sitting beside a body of water quietly, many of us experience a subtle but powerful recalibration. It's almost as if the body remembers something ancient, and maybe it does. Human beings begin life suspended in fluid. Our bodies are composed largely of water. The earth itself is mostly water, so we're not separate from it. One of the things I've noticed while guiding nature therapy walks is how often people are drawn toward water without needing instruction, without me guiding them there. If there's a stream nearby, participants naturally drift toward it. We pause longer there. We breathe differently there. Sometimes people who struggle to become present in a forest suddenly soften beside moving water. And I get that. Forests can feel quiet in a way that initially comforts us, but water often feels relational, almost conversational. It's dynamic. It gives the mind something gentle to follow. A flowing stream doesn't ask anything of us. It simply continues moving. And somehow that movement reminds us that we can continue moving too. Honeybees understand something about movement and survival that we sometimes forget. Water must remain accessible. Beekeepers learn quickly that if bees don't have a safe water source nearby, they'll go searching for one elsewhere. And elsewhere often becomes people's swimming pools or air conditioning units, gutters, muddy tire ruts, or your neighbor's bird baths. Bees are very practical. They don't necessarily choose the cleanest water source. In fact, bees are often attracted to mineral-rich or slightly muddy water because it contains nutrients they need. I've always found that interesting because it mirrors something true about human healing as well. Healing rarely looks pristine. We often imagine wellness as crystal clear water, perfect stillness, or total peace. But real healing is usually a lot messier than that. It can involve tears, discomfort, rest, honest conversations, hard conversations, periods of uncertainty. Sometimes the waters that restore us are not aesthetically beautiful at all. Sometimes healing happens while sitting on the floor of a shower after a breakup. Sometimes it happens floating quietly in a lake. Sometimes it happens while walking along the shoreline, carrying a grief you can't yet name. And sometimes healing begins simply because the nervous system finally feels safe enough to unclench. And water helps create those moments. There's something important to say here about collective wellness. A single bee carrying droplets of water back to the hive may seem insignificant, but collectively, thousands of bees regulate the colony's survival by doing just that. Humans are not meant to regulate alone either. We live in a culture that often glorifies self-sufficiency to an unhealthy degree. We praise independence, productivity, and endurance. But biology tells a different story. Nervous systems co-regulate. We calm one another through tone of voice, presence, touch, eye contact, and emotional safety. Just as bees fan the hive together, humans survive stress best in supportive communities. And maybe water itself becomes part of that co-regulation. Think about how often human connection forms around water. Families gathering at beaches, friends beside campfires near rivers, children learning to swim, and communities built along coastlines and bays. I know the waterfront here is always in high demand. Even many spiritual traditions use water symbolically. I think of baptisms, cleansing rituals, ceremonial baths, all sorts of purification practices. Across cultures and throughout history, humans have repeatedly understood water as more than matter, as medicine, transition, renewal. And honestly, I think honeybees understand renewal too. After winter, one of the first warm days often sends bees searching for water. Colonies reawaken, brood production increases, life begins expanding again. Spring water sources become critical. And isn't that true for us as well? After long emotional winters, we also need places of replenishment. We need environments that help us remember who we are beneath the exhaustion and noise. I got that when I went to Florida. For some people, that replenishment comes through forests. For others, gardens. For others, oceans, pools, rivers, rainstorms, baths, or simply sitting quietly near water with absolutely no agenda. There's no single correct way to connect. And in fact, I think the more of these you can use, the better off you are. But I do think many of us are more dehydrated emotionally and spiritually than we realize. Not just thirsty for liquids, but thirsty for stillness and softness and sensory relief, for spaces where the nervous system can stop bracing itself. And I think that's one of the reasons water affects us so deeply. It does invite us to surrender without demanding performance. You don't have to achieve anything while floating. You don't have to impress a river. You don't have to optimize yourself beside the ocean. Water does not care about your productivity. It simply asks whether you are willing to enter it, listen to it, or allow it to hold you for a while. I think honeybees teach us something important here. Despite all of their productivity, and bees are extraordinarily productive creatures, they still prioritize what sustains the colony at the most basic level. So it's more than food and labor, it's regulation, cooling, balance, and survival. The hive understands that life can't continue without maintaining internal conditions that support well-being. And humans would benefit from remembering that too, especially now. So many people are living in states of chronic nervous system overload. Constant notifications, constant information, constant urgency. We're really overheating internally. And maybe part of the answer is not always to push harder, but to return to elemental things like rest, silence, nature, our breath, our community, and water. Healing doesn't always require dramatic transformation. Maybe sometimes it begins with just placing your feet in a creek or floating in a pool after sunset, taking a bath without bringing your phone into the bathroom, sitting beside rain on the porch long enough to hear yourself think. These small acts matter a lot. Honeybees know this. A single bee carries only a tiny droplet of water at a time, but collectively those droplets sustain the entire hive. And I think our healing works similarly. Not through one perfect breakthrough, but through small moments of replenishment gathered consistently over time. It could be a walk beside the bay, an afternoon swim, just a few quiet breaths in the shower, and pausing long enough to notice the sound of moving water, the tiny droplets of restoration, enough eventually to cool an overheated life. And I think that's my invitation today, to pay attention to what your nervous system is asking for, to notice where you feel dry, depleted, or overheated internally, and to remember that people, just like honeybees, were never meant to survive without access to what restores them. Water sustains hives, it sustains bodies, and it sustains ecosystems. And sometimes, in ways science can measure and mystery still holds, water sustains the soul too. So if you're able to go out and enjoy the rain or just watch it through your window, I hope you enjoy this weekend. And until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of others, and take care of those bees.
As the day settles back into green, let the quiet stay with you. Tend the small things, rest and remember the high